Hello and welcome to the programme where you can help stop crime. The detectives behind me need your help with unsolved crimes and they're waiting for your call, and so are police throughout the country. Here's the number: 01 811 8055. But do have a pencil and paper handy if you can.
Remember, everything you see tonight is fact. All our reconstructions are based meticulously on evidence taken from police files. We use the actual locations and, where possible, the actual cars, clothes, sometimes even the people involved. In the next 40 minutes, you may see someone you recognise or something you remember. If so, we'll be waiting for your call.
Calls last month had dramatic and immediate results. Remember the After Time gang? 2 men held customers at gunpoint for 2 hours in the old Stanley pub in Liverpool and robbed them. 10 days later, there was a similar attack at the Bluebell Inn in Warrington in Cheshire. Police helped us to make a very vivid reconstruction in the hope that the people who knew the culprits might call in. In all, 500 people phoned, and as a result of information received, 2 men, George Christopher Kendrick and Dominic Thomas Gallagher, both from Liverpool, have been remanded in custody on 2 charges of aggravated burglary and 1 of wounding.
There were 100 calls with help for detectives hunting the killer of Caroline Osborne, who ran a small business looking after dogs in Leicester. Our reconstruction showed what was almost certainly the last time she was seen alive, at Aylstone Meadows in July last year. Then there was that unidentified blue van. The police had a particularly promising lead from one caller. Remember, they're anxious to find a blue van which Caroline had sometimes been seen using. They tracked down one such van and its owner in the area, but last week finally eliminated it from their inquiries. So they're still looking and following up some of the 43 new clues they received as a result of the programme. And if you knew Caroline ever, please do call. We'll let you know what happens as the other leads unravel.
And after last month's Crime Watch, there were important developments in Britain's biggest ever household break-in. The house, Woburn Abbey. The hall, £5 million worth of silver. We showed how the thieves beat the patrolling guards and the elaborate security system to get to the historic treasures. As a result of the mounting publicity, direct negotiations began between the police and one of the crooks. The police set up a trap with the silver as bait. But the plan went wrong when 2 water workers making a routine check stumbled onto the treasure and thought it was a bomb. Ah well, Bedfordshire police say they know who they're after and they expect to make an arrest shortly.
Well, tonight we want you to watch a reconstruction of a strange and sinister case which has been baffling police for the last 5 months. It's the killing of a little boy. The motive is unclear. What we do know is that the case involves a mysterious nighttime visitor, a disappearing television set and a car left with its headlights on. The victim, who died from a savage beating, was 9-year-old Christopher Laverack. He lived in Humberside in the Anlaby district of Hull. Every other Friday, when he wasn't spending the weekend with his father, Christopher Laverack was brought here to number 7 Harpham Grove to stay with his half-sister and her family. His mother and stepfather made sure that he got there in time for his favourite TV show, The Fall Guy.
Big news from Minstrels. Now you get 20% extra.
Christopher always had a good time staying with his half-sister Kim and her husband Stephen Hines.
I've never been with anything less than a 9. So fine, I've been on fire with Sally Field, gone past with the girl named...
Despite a complicated family life, Christopher was a happy kid. Friends knew him as a shy and sensible lad who loved motorbikes and watching TV. He was getting on well at school and had just recently joined the local church choir. That night, as often happened, Christopher's half-sister, Kim, was driven to a local pub, The Crown, where she worked as a barmaid, leaving husband Stephen with their own young son and Christopher. At the pub in Marfleet Lane, Chris's mother and stepfather stopped off for a drink with Kim before going to visit relatives. Later that evening, with Christopher still watching the television and the baby in bed, Stephen decided to go out. This was the last reported sighting of Christopher Laverack.
I won't be long. Keep an eye on Martin. What sort of crisps do you want?
Cheese and onion, please.
And 2 cheese and onion.
Stephen also went to the Crown, the pub where Kim was working. Back at Harpham Grove, an unfamiliar parked car had caught the eye of a neighbour, who Christopher called Auntie Marge. She was wondering why the car had been left with its headlights on.
Steve. Steve. Steve, I want to talk to you. Steve, let me in. Steve, I want to talk to you.
The voice came from someone standing outside Steve's front door. At the dividing wall, Auntie Marge heard the front door being opened. Then all seemed quiet, so she went off to bed. A few minutes later, she heard the car pulling away. That car, according to the best evidence police have, was shaped like this. It's never been traced.
You don't get all this stuff on the top. You get your glass.
By now, Stephen had spent about an hour in the pub.
Chris? Chris?
Apart from the baby crying, the house was strangely quiet. The television had been ripped out. And then it dawned. Christopher had gone. Stephen ran to tell Kim and then called the police. They started a search in and around the house. Christopher had never run away, and his mother had no idea where he was. His real father was contacted, but he hadn't seen Chris either. The search went on into the night. It was intensified at first light, fanning out across wasteland near Harpham Grove. But there was no sign of Christopher. Nor was there the ransom demand that was half expected. Christopher Laverack had now been missing for 36 hours. Expecting the worst, police divers began dragging a nearby stretch of water. But the discovery was not made by the police. At the same time, 10 miles away, alongside Beverly Beck, this man was taking his usual Sunday morning stroll with his dog. Christopher Laverack had died as a result of severe head injuries inflicted, the police believe, on Friday night. And Detective Chief Inspector Baker is in charge of that case. Now, that bag that Christopher was found in was actually a carpet bag, wasn't it?
Yes, it was a Treader underlay carpet bag, and this is one identical to it.
And are you hoping that somebody might find that gone missing, maybe lost it or left it?
Yes, hoping that somebody in the Humberside or Beverley area, sometime prior to the 9th of March, might have thrown one away or might have lent one to somebody or might have left one outside and it suddenly disappeared or something like that.
How much do you know about how and where he died?
Well, we know that Christopher died on the Friday night, and we know that he died of severe head injuries, and we also know that he died in a field which contained growing winter barley.
Now, forensic evidence shows that he died on the Friday night, but it wasn't until the Sunday morning, in fact, that he was found 9 miles away from Harpham Grove in Beverley Beck. How do you think he might have got into Beverley Beck?
Well, obviously we think he's gone in some form of vehicle. Which vehicle, we don't know.
Maybe that car, that unidentified car from that night?
Well, obviously we're very interested in that vehicle, and despite numerous appeals to the press and the TV, the driver of that vehicle hasn't come forward.
But somebody at the Beck that weekend may have seen something, surely?
That's right, and we've had a good response from the public. Many people have come forward, but we've never had a sighting of Christopher's body in the Beck until it was seen actually on the Sunday morning.
So you think somebody perhaps would have parked on that bridge or driven past that bridge and seen something?
Somebody could, yes. We did get a lot of reports of vehicles stationary on that bridge, and there's roads that go alongside the Beck, and the boy's body could have easily been put in from there.
Now, what about this television set? The strange thing about it is that it was ripped out from the back of the set, the flex, while it was still plugged in.
That's right. This is the actual flex. This end was plugged into the wall in 7 Harpham Grove. This end went towards the television set, and we believe there's a piece missing from here. So what we're hoping to trace is the television set, and we're hoping that somebody might know of somebody who has got a television set with an unusually short cable, or somebody's asked to repair one, or somebody sold one, or somebody's now got one in the possession. And we're also asking for farmers who have been harvesting in fields of winter barley to keep an eye open for this television set, and we regard this as a vital piece of evidence.
We might find who killed Christopher Laberack if we can find that television set.
Could well be the case, yes.
Mr. Baker, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So, if you've got that ITT television or know anything else about the murder, the number, remember, 01 811 8055, or you can phone Humberside Police direct at Hull. The number, Hull 796271. That's 0482 for Hull 796271. Well, now, this month's Aladdin's Cave. Valuables recovered by the police and which they suspect are stolen. They need to find their rightful owners. Now, last time, over 50 items were identified and 2 big burglaries were cleared up as a result. This month's haul is in the custody of Thames Valley Police, but it might have come from anywhere. So if you've ever been burgled and lost anything unusual, watch closely as John Bly from the Antiques Roadshow goes through this month's loot.
Thank you, Nick. Well, once again, the range of antiques is enormous, but this time we've got a lot of pictures. We've got oils and watercolours, portraits and landscapes, ancient and modern, even a Renoir and a Cézanne. But be they masterpieces or merely decorative paintings, any of these will have left quite a gap on the wall. So too will any one of these bracket clocks, ranging in date from the Edwardian one at the end to Victorian, and then a Regency, late Regency one, then early 19th century, and this one, my particular favourite, made about 1735 by William Howes of London, and retaining its original red lacquer case in the Chinese taste. Now, you know, Chinese decoration was revived again in Regency England and remained fashionable throughout the 19th century. And just look for an example at this late but quite lovely vase. The colours in there are quite stunning. Set as they are against this black background, it's quite an important vase. Late, too late to be of any great antique value, but a wonderful thing. Now from ceramics to silver, and in silver this little snuff box has a story to tell. Made in Birmingham in 1835, it was later inscribed by Dr. G.J. Hall in memory of his late uncle, Sir David J.H. Dixon. And I'm sure that that little box must have revived, I hope, someone's memory. Curiously enough, the best furniture we've got tonight is also in silver, but not in miniature. And here, 3 little pieces of silver from the mid-19th century, typical Dutch pieces made as Victorian novelties. And they are part of a collection which is in that cabinet, the display cabinet at the end. It's a specially made cabinet and would have made a very important and quite a long established collection. But those are all individual pieces in a collection of miniatures. The most important and stunning thing for my mind tonight is this European ivory carving. It is later mounted in silver as a drinking vessel and has around it a parade of these most wonderful little rounded, cheerful, chubby little cherubs or putti or amorini, what can only be described in bacchanalian pursuit. That is quite a wonderful object, and I know one thing, I'd sorely miss it if it were mine. I hope you've recognised something tonight, and if you have, please ring us here at Crime Watch UK.
John Bly. Here's the number 01 811 8055. Or you can ring Thames Valley. Ring them at Reading 585 111. That's 0734 585 111. Now to the Crime Watch UK Incident Desk, where we invite the police to appeal to you directly for help in solving crime. Here are Detective Constable Helen Phelps and Chief Inspector David Hatcher.
First on Incident Desk tonight, a particularly macabre case. Yianula Yiani, a 17-year-old Cypriot girl, was raped and strangled 2 years ago this week at her home in Belsize Road, Hampstead, London. We believe the murderer is also responsible for the desecration of her grave, which began last October, almost a year after her death. The grave is in the New Southgate Cemetery in North London. Yianula's parents noticed that the oil lamp below the cross at the grave had been interfered with. The wick had been removed over 40 times. The desecration actually happened on one occasion while the grave was under police surveillance, using infrared cameras, and yet the film revealed nothing. The Metropolitan Police have used the newly developed BBC Crime Watch video fit system to improve this photo fit of a man seen following Yianula near her home shortly before she died. With the help of the witness and the investigating officer, we've brought it much closer to the witness's original memory by adding colour to the eyes, skin and hair. He's described as 5'6" tall, in his late teens or early 20s, possibly of Greek Cypriot origin and also possibly with a moustache. The video fit shows us what he'd look like without the moustache too. Much younger, in fact nearer the age the witness remembered him to be. Do you know anyone who looks like this? Have you seen anyone behaving suspiciously in or around New Southgate Cemetery?
And we'd also like to see if you can recognise two men who robbed the National and Provincial Building Society in Victoria Street, London, on the 9th of January this year. Unknown to them, two cameras recorded their every move. The time was 4:40 on a Monday afternoon. This is how the leader of the two men threatened staff with a gun. He's thought to be in his late 30s and may have a northern accent. His partner is in his 20s. From the pictures, we're convinced that someone will be able to recognise one or both of these men, and if so, we'd like to hear from you. Take another closer look. You may have seen two men like this together, drinking in your local pub. Please give us a ring here at Crime Watch if you think you can help identify them. All calls will be treated in confidence.
This is a £50 note. In fact, it's not worth the paper it's printed on. It's a forgery. Indeed, I've had to promise to return this one after the programme for it to be destroyed officially. The forgeries, and they're a tiny fraction of the 20 million or so genuine £50 notes in circulation, have been around since Easter. Now they're turning up in Northern Ireland. Police there have told us that so far 36 counterfeit notes have been recovered, mainly from the Antrim, Belfast, Down and Armagh areas. The forgeries are of a very high standard, but if you know what you're looking for, they're easy to spot. By holding them against the light, you can see that they have no watermark on the front left-hand side. Also, there's no metallic strip in the note, although some form of dye has been used to give the impression of one. And finally, the forgeries feel different. The paper is of an inferior quality. Remember, if you're lucky enough to receive a £50 note, then do examine it against the light, because if it is a forgery and you've accepted it, then the loss is yours. If you're unlucky enough to get caught out, then do contact your local police station immediately.
There's been a dramatic new turn in an unsolved murder which happened over 6 years ago in Bath. Avon and Somerset Police have asked Crime Watch to help them with a vital new lead. The victim, Mrs Beryl Culverwell, was found dead in the garage of her home in Widcombe Hill, Bath. She had been stabbed and then bludgeoned to death with a shotgun. Only 10 days ago, Bath Police received an anonymous phone call which they believe to be genuine. The caller claims that the man who murdered Mrs Culverwell has a tattoo, a swallow, somewhere on the left side of his face. It may be on his forehead, something like this. Or it could be lower down. Do you know anyone who has this distinctive mark? Please contact us. Another clue. He was sharing a flat somewhere in the Bath area in 1978 with a man called Steve. Police would also like the anonymous caller and Steve to come forward.
Finally, a last-minute appeal today from Hampshire Police in connection with a crime which took place in the New Forest last Thursday. They need your help to track down a man who carried out a particularly savage rape on a 58-year-old German tourist in the woods just off the A35. The man, 20 to 30 years old, of West Indian or African origin, slim, athletic build, had his hair done in what's called the cane row style. He was wearing a mid to royal blue V-neck jumper and dark-coloured trousers or possibly shorts. Round his neck he had 3 silver-coloured chains with a number of medallions hanging from one of them. A man fitting the description was seen shortly after the attack driving away in a large green box van along the A35 in the direction of Lyndhurst. We'd like to hear from anyone who's seen or knows of a dark green van like this. It has a roll-up back door, which could have been driven by our multi-medallion man in the New Forest last Thursday. Remember, you can ring us in strictest confidence here at Crime Watch UK.
The number, as always, 01 811 8055. And the detectives here at Crime Watch are already busy with calls received on tonight's cases. We've had nearly 50 calls so far. Over a dozen people have rung in with information on the Hull case. That's the killing of Christopher Laverack. Please do keep trying if you find the lines engaged, but you should get through at the moment. The number 01 811 8055.
Well, now to Operation Bogey, which is the name that the Manchester Regional Crime Squad has given to the task of catching a crook, a bogus official who's been preying on elderly and defenceless victims. He's thought to have committed more than 130 offences, and this hunt for the Manchester bogeyman serves as a warning to people everywhere. His method of operation is a common one. The suave antiques dealer in one place will appear as the gas man in another, and crooks like him operate throughout the country.
Yes?
From the gas board. Sorry to bother you, but we're just checking the new metering system in this area. I have to take a few quick readings. Do you mind if I come in? It won't take a minute.
It's easy to be fooled by the official-looking card. It's just as easy to be fooled by the helpful handyman.
Look, I hate to tell you this, love, but it's a bit of a mess up there. Whoever done that chimney was a right cowboy. The point is in a dreadful state. Look, I could do that job in an afternoon for 50 quid. It'll save you a lot of time and trouble later.
He may just be ripping you off, or like our next con man, he could be blatantly casing your joint for a tasty antique.
I spend most of my time travelling up and down the country talking to people like yourself. And you know, you wouldn't believe how many things they have that are valuable. They don't realise they're antiques. They think they're just worthless. Yes. You've got some very valuable things in this house.
Well, these crimes rarely make the headlines, but their effects are sometimes much more devastating to the victims than other crimes which seem a great deal more dramatic. The Manchester conman, thereafter, seems to have been operating for almost 3 years. His favourite targets are elderly people living alone in high-rise blocks.
He came in and he said he wanted to inspect the plugs, and he went from room to room, and I was trying to follow him, and of course in my condition I couldn't follow him, you see. I had an electric bill due and a phone bill almost due, and some money for my son to take me away for 5 days to Eastbourne. So I put it in my handbag, and he must have picked it up, opened it very quickly. He was a very smooth customer. Opened the zip like that, taken everything out, including my pension, and he got away with the lot.
He took £10 in notes. He took a lady's gold wristwatch. The watch on the chain was... Oh, dear me, I don't know how to say it. Gone.
For 79-year-old Henry Townsend, it's those personal mementos he misses most.
Inside my coat was a fob pocket, and inside that fob pocket I put the rings. He missed them, but took the gold wristwatch and the gold locket and chain.
I went to my cooker and he pulled the drawer open. he could see there was money in a patty, so he undid it, took the money out. So I thought, oh, my money. When I opened the drawer, my money had gone. But mind you, if I could have got my hands on him, I've got something in here. I'd have clocked him on the head with it. He wouldn't have got up no more.
Well, Detective Superintendent Wood, what else can you tell us about this man which might just make somebody realise that they've met him or seen him somewhere?
Well, here we have a very evil man who is very plausible, very confident, and gets into people's homes by winning the confidence of the individual. He operates normally at the lunchtime period. He steals property, which is mainly cash, and we're aware that he's stolen in excess of £50,000.
That's some going, isn't it? Well, let's have a look at the character you want people to watch out for. We have several descriptions of the man, who's white and in his mid to late 30s, and those descriptions differ slightly in some details. So let's start off with one of the most recent sightings. This standard photo fit came from a witness who encountered him earlier this year. Once again, the Crime Watch video fit cleans up the black and white original and, according to the witness's recollection, adds details like skin tone and hair colour. Various witnesses thought the moustache was false. The video fit gives you an impression of how he'd look without one. There have been other good descriptions. This photo fit from 1982 shows a man with rather straighter hair. In this case, by the way, we haven't enough information to add any greater detail. If you put the three video fit images side by side, we'll get a range there of possible faces.
Yes, these are very good descriptions indeed, but we are mindful, of course, in some instances we've had the moustache described as being false, and of course that could equally apply to the hair as well. So what we're asking anybody who feels they could assist us with the identity of this man, we'd be very grateful.
So basically, if anybody sees anybody suspicious, no matter what they look like, if they think they might be the person, to get in touch with you.
Oh yes.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Wood.
Well, the number, if you can help, 01811 8055 here in the Crime Watch studio, or you can ring Manchester direct on 855 3975. There it is, 061 for Manchester, 855 3975. Now, a story about one man and his dog. It's a mystery story that ends up with both man and dog being attacked and stabbed to death in a wood in Sussex. As the story unfolds, you may feel that you have rather little sympathy for the man. He was a drugs dealer, and one that cheated his customers at that. But the police are particularly anxious to catch the killer. It looks like what's at stake here may be a drugs ring whose members are prepared to kill to get their way. The trail starts at a seaside town. Hastings is a quiet south coast resort with pleasure craft and fishing boats and a tradition of smuggling that goes back generations. The modern contraband is drugs, and for those that want it, there's anonymity in a town that's used to having visitors, and there are good connections to London and beyond. 5 months ago, these men discovered how deadly some of those connections are. Near Brightling, 12 miles from Hastings, there's an aerial ropeway that links a gypsum mine and its processing works. For 3 months, there'd been something lying, decomposing and undetected in the undergrowth.
What you got there? What you found? Leave, get away, leave it. Baby! Leave it.
Gary Collins was barely recognisable. He'd been 25, tall, with dark curly hair. He and the dog had been beaten and stabbed repeatedly. Gary had always lived in Hastings, a fit young man, a sportsman. He'd been living with his girlfriend, and the two of them had been saving up to buy a house. Gary and his Alsatian collie Trudy had gone missing 2 weeks before Christmas. The last time they were seen alive was when they left their rented flat in St Thomas's Road in Hastings. It's 10 o'clock on the morning of the 12th of December last year. A neighbour saw him leave. Gary Collins should have gone to work that day, but didn't. He had a part-time job packing eggs, but police now know Gary had been running a little business of his own. He started by selling small amounts of cannabis to friends, but then to an ever-growing market. He was known to customers and dealers as the man with the dog. The two of them had been frequent visitors to London in the year before they died. Several of Gary's associates have helped police to build up a picture of his growing trade in drugs. So far, Gary's movements have been traced to North and West London in particular. He's known to have met contacts in Camden, Islington and Kensington. And it's clear his drugs dealing involved double dealing too. Two people, a former partner in crime of his and one of Gary's former cannabis suppliers, have given matching descriptions of an incident that shows the dangerous and devious game Gary was involved in. The drug supplier was to meet them at Victoria.
Get it all?
Yeah, fine.
I'll put this in the boot. Yeah, right.
You got a fag?
You have one of his, you want?
Where's he gone?
So I made a phone call, eh?
Have you got the money then?
Well, he'd give it to you to snout, didn't he?
You bastards.
By then, it was too late. Gary's accomplice vanished with the drugs, and Gary just drove off. Gary's deals were also growing more ambitious. Through Interpol, police have traced a grand scheme for smuggling cocaine through Brussels and Amsterdam, financed by exporting illegal amphetamines to Stockholm. Shocked by Gary's murder, another dealer at the time explains how Gary was now playing in a bigger league.
He was known as the dealer, the man with the BMW and the dog. He would have been an easy target to any of the other type of gangsters that are just looking plainly to rip people off. You know, I mean, they'll sort of promise the earth and all they want is to rip off everything. They'll even come up with the hash and you'll come up with the money and they'll take both.
What happened in the last few hours of Gary's life is still not known. Remember, it's Monday morning, 2 weeks before Christmas. Someone drove his grey BMW to Battle railway station. The station staff saw it there at noon. The rest is speculation. Except for one thing. Whoever took the car there took the trouble to turn it round in the narrow car park to face the exit. Perhaps Gary drove it there himself. Maybe he'd arranged to meet a contact there. Curiously, though Gary was meticulous about his BMW, the car was left unlocked. Maybe there was an unexpected change of plan. Or maybe Gary met someone at Battle Station from a London or Hastings train, and perhaps they drove off together, and the car was later taken back there after Gary's death. Or maybe Gary never went to Battle Station. The car was simply dumped there after he was killed. Whatever happened at the station, somehow, presumably with someone, Gary went to the secluded woods by the gypsum mine near Breitling. With him, as almost always, was his dog. Somewhere he changed into Wellingtons from the light brown moccasins he'd been wearing when he'd left the flat. The moccasins are an important clue. They haven't yet been found. It's fairly certain from forensic evidence that Gary was alive when he arrived at the woods near Breitling.
Come on, Treat. Come on. Come on.
Maybe he was forced there. Maybe he was going to retrieve some hidden drugs or money. On Monday, December the 12th last year, Gary Collins and Trudy went on their last walk together. Well, you might see something about the death of Gary Collins in the papers tomorrow, because today an inquest at Hastings into his death recorded a verdict of unlawful killing. Superintendent Clements, it's obviously a very difficult case for you, because people who've been dealing in drugs, people who've been buying cannabis, are most unlikely to come forward as witnesses.
That's true. We've considered the matter so serious that we've granted an amnesty against anybody that has had any drug dealings with Gary Collins, in the hope that they'll come forward and give us information or evidence that may help us trace the person responsible for Gary's death.
To be candid, even though you say you've got an amnesty, I can imagine people watching who may have known Gary, may have, say, bought cannabis from him, don't think they can solve the murder and will be very reluctant, particularly if they don't have a record, to get on police files.
Well, I can quite definitely say that anyone that comes forward and gives details about dealings they've had with Gary can feel absolutely certain nothing will happen. We have plenty of statements from people who've had dealings with Gary, that statements which could have landed them into very serious trouble, but we've taken no notice of this because we're after a particularly vicious criminal who's killed this man in a most savage manner.
The man in the silhouette?
That's right.
Who helped us, what's happened to him? Have you taken action against him?
No, not at all.
And if people want to ring anonymously, will you listen to their information?
Absolutely. Obviously, the best information is from persons who give their name and address, but anyone who wants to ring anonymously, we should be more than pleased to hear what they've got to say, Mr. Ross.
Now, if people do ring in, what is it that you want to know? What sort of people do you want to reach?
We want to hear from people that have known Gary, especially in drug stealing, anybody that might have seen him when he arrived at Battle Railway Station on the 12th of December, or perhaps even out at Breitling Wood. People that might have been on holiday, that just happened to be passing and didn't even know that a murder had been committed.
The date, of course, 2 weeks before Christmas, the 12th of December,
That's
wasn't
right.
it? So you really want anybody who knew Gary, did drugs dealing, but knew him at any stage and may know nothing about the murder?
Well, if they think they can help us at all, we would be more than pleased to hear from them.
Have you got hold of everyone you want in particular? Are there any people you know of out there that haven't yet come forward?
There is a lady, a blonde woman, in a brown coat that has been seen by a green Toledo, that has been seen with Gary on the A21, which is the battle to the main London road, on at least 2 occasions, and on one occasion which she was with 2 men who carried grey disposable bags. And I would like to say, Mr. Ross, that there is also, of course, a reward of £5,000 offered by Mr. Collins Sr., Gary's father, for any information that leads to the arrest and conviction of the persons responsible for Gary's death.
Bill Clements, thank you very much indeed. Right, again, the numbers, remember there's an amnesty, remember whatever you think about cannabis or other drugs, we're looking for a murderer and a man who could strike again. Call us here please, 01 811 8055. You can talk to civilians if you prefer, or you can call Sussex Police directly. Their number, Hastings 444 212. That's 0424 444 212.
And if you haven't had a chance to write the numbers down, they're all on CFAX, if you have that, on page 187, together with a brief summary of the cases. And if you can't get through or you don't have a telephone, then drop us a line. Here's the address: Crime Watch UK, BBC TV Centre, London W12. The main number is easy to remember and will be here all evening, so please ring if you think you might be able to help in any way, however small.
In fact, I can tell you we've 40 calls already on the Humberside boy with information, some identification of items from Aladdin's cave. In fact, as always, we'll be back to tell you what develops an hour and a half from now. That's Crime Watch UK Update here on BBC One at 25 to 12. That's directly after the feature film. If you can't stay up till then, please don't have nightmares. Thankfully, the sort of crimes we've been featuring tonight really are far less common than most people imagine them to be. Maybe you can help us make them rarer still.
Remember the number again, 01811 8055. We'll be waiting for your call. For the moment, good night.